Chapter 51. You are listening at novelfull.audio. All this said, Diane was well aware of his problems. He had seen a myriad of movement techniques in the library, but all of them had ridiculous cultivation requirements. However, he wanted to wait until he could temper his physical body to maturity before beginning. The problem was that without movement techniques, the situation that happened last night would occur again and again. His senses were more than powerful enough to see Oliver's movements. In fact, Oliver was slow to him, the problem was having fast enough speed to dodge. If he had used enough amplification arrays to do that, he would have turned his legs into paste. Which brought him back to the idea of tempering his body. Diane was about to stand to see if he could sneak out of the academy and head to the outside world, when an idea suddenly came to mind. That night, they were talking about how a sect used to be here. A massive hole ended up in the place they used to be. I keep feeling something coming from that lake. Maybe the ruins of that ancient sect are still there. Diane hesitated. He had been trying to ignore this idea during this whole time. But, up to now, he had already run through a quarter of his 2-month time frame and there was nothing else for him to benefit from here. He felt like whatever was down below the lake was beyond him. But, if he didn't take any risks, would it even be possible for him to accomplish his goals? Diane looked up toward the ceiling, steeling himself. Now that he had reaffirmed the foundations of his array alchemy, maybe it was time to take a chance. If not now, then when? Diane jumped up, heading towards books classified as geography. He had ignored them before, but now he was very interested. He imprinted a map of the ancient sect in his mind. The Celestial Deer Sect. Interesting, it seems like they specialize in array alchemy, yet their books are so profound. It's either this sect was ridiculously powerful, or Focus Academy is just that weak. What Diane didn't know was that he was very NA.VE in his statement. The truth was, the Celestial Deer Sect was probably the most advanced sect in terms of array alchemy due to their beast protector. The Celestial Deer. Because of Diane's innate aurora, he never needed a medium to imprint arrays. However, those who forcibly awakened their auroras had no choice but to use these mediums. Of which, the crystals created by the Celestial Deer was the best. Grandmaster level array alchemists, a level of expert 3 steps higher than the current Diane, and beyond relied on these crystals to power their most powerful arrays and forge their most potent pills. These crystals also had an amplification effect even for those who had innate auroras. But, the techniques had long been lost along with the destruction of the sect. So, Diane continued on in ignorance. Aside from my boost in array alchemy, I scanned through all of the sword cultivation techniques I could in addition to books about sensing wills and intents. It looks like my path to increasing my power will be through understanding wills. But, I'll have to increase the power of my body first so I can use my more powerful soul as a medium. Using my level 9 music will for just 5 hours almost put me on the brink of death before and even made me suffer at the hands of that jackass. If I want to use multiple wills at a time or am in battle, the stress will be even worse. All in all, strengthening my body is my top priority. Then, I'll focus on movement techniques. After that, I'll master arrays up to the 9th common level. If I'm talented enough and still have time, I'll start my path on the way of the sword. Diane took a deep breath, imprinting this map into his mind. It seems it's time to visit the bottom of this lake. If things were so easy, wouldn't the experts of Focus Academy have already found something? That said, since the very beginning, Diane had felt something calling out to him. In the dead of night, Diane peeked his head down through the ceiling of the bottom level of the central pillar to ensure no one was there. After confirming, he made his way through the window, slipping through and slowly making his way down. Although they called this body of water Focus Lake, Diane was well aware that its depths were at the very least comparable to the ocean. He wasn't sure if his usual defensive array could withstand the pressure, so he spent an extra 2 days learning a peak common level defensive array that just might save his life. It took him hours to finish drawing it, and he ensured there was a slight imperfection so that the heavens' chimes wouldn't ring. Although this might have let Madeline know he was alive, if he was caught in the central tower because of something like this, it wouldn't be good. After a few hours, the sinister aura Diane had felt before was becoming more and more prevalent. But, Diane steeled his resolve. If an ancient clan really had ruins that lay here, it would be too beneficial for him to pass up. There could never be benefits without risk, so he was willing to take the risks in order to save Madeline. Every time he thought about the helplessness she must be feeling right now, his eyes became colder. Soon, an astonishing sight appeared in front of Diane's eyes. It was a massive domed formation, covering hundreds of miles in every direction. Diane was stunned. It couldn't be this easy, right? How could a massive formation like this be missed by the elders of Focus Academy? No, that wasn't right. When Diane first came here, the waters were clear as glass. Even with its depth, he felt like he could see all the way to the bottom, but this formation dome was definitely not here before. What was happening? Chapter 52. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Diane choked. What level of array alchemy must you reach to make something like this? Can I even pass through this? My spatial array is a joke in front of a defensive array like this, if it even is a defensive array. My only chance is if I use a spatial array blessed by heaven's chimes. Hopefully, after so many years, the formation has weakened enough for it to work. Just as Diane was about to try his fifth common level spatial array, he touched the massive defensive array and seemed to slip right through. In one instant, he was floating in water, but in the next he was falling through the air, his eyes widened with shock. Without a choice, he could only use a few defensive arrays to quickly break his fall. It must be an array that blocks threats. I guess I'm not powerful enough to be a threat, Diane chuckled bitterly, landing on the ground with a thud. This was the only conclusion Diane could come to with the information he had. Just then, a flash of black light zipped by Diane, surprising him. What was that? Diane got up cautiously. Bang! Something knocked into Diane's chest, making him fall on the ground. He had expected a sharp pain. But, surprisingly, there was hardly any pain at all. What the hell is going on? Just as Diane was getting up again, another black light hit him on his back, causing him to fall face first. What the hell? Diane's eyes flashed with golden lights as he prepared to instantly cast a defensive spatial array combination to trap the black light in with him. BL.net. The black light came again, but this time Diane was ready. A sphere appeared around him just as the black light rammed into him, knocking him to the other side of the array. But, as the black light tried to escape, what sounded like a whimper sounded off as it realized it was trapped. Not willing to give up, it bounced around the array, causing cracks to form. Oh no, you don't. Diane grasped towards the black light, but to no avail. I'll have to shrink the array. This was a manipulation technique he had learned before even the banquet. It was what allowed Diane to change the shape of his arrays into a more convenient form. It had also allowed him to form the phoenix to fly Madeline to the banquet. But, the flames themselves were from his aurora. Soon, Diane was crouching down looking at an adorably pouting puppy-like creature. He was stunned that such a creature could even survive down here all alone. It looked like a deer, but it had paws instead of hooves. Its black fur actually had patches of jet-black scales on it. Its tiny head had what looked like bumps where horns would eventually grow in. However, this was heavily contrasted by majestic swirls of white fur and a single white pearl-like scale on its forehead. It looked like a beautiful breed of puppy, a sort of gorgeous exotic creature. Though, it had speed that threw Diane for a loop. You're adorable, Diane said with a chuckle. Did you want to play? Diane reached out to pat on the little guy's head. It didn't seem to protest as it looked on in interest, seemingly still surprised that it had been caught. Diane picked him up and held him in his arms, dispersing the array. What are you doing here alone, little guy? Diane continued to look around, content with the fact his new little friend didn't seem to want to leave his arms. Although Diane seemed nonchalant about this encounter, his mind was actually racing. All he saw around him were ruined and aged buildings, the area seemed completely desolate. Yet, there was clearly a living creature in his arms. Were there others? Has someone been raising him this whole time? Diane decided to walk to the absolute center where he saw a massive building. Although it wasn't as tall as the center pillar, it looked about as wide as the pillar was tall, so there might be clues there. After a few hours, the building was finally right in front of Diane, but the sinister aura was the thickest he'd felt yet. He was absolutely certain that the danger he had felt from this place before was coming from here. As he was about to go in, the little guy in his arms started to squirm, causing Diane's heart to seize. "You have a lot of nerve, treating my child like a pet," a voice boomed, but it seemed to be transmitted directly into Diane's head. Diane looked around, shivering as he saw the massive silhouette of a pure white majestic deer with swirls of gold on its fur appear in the skies. Its eyes were an endless void of white and its aura was suffocating. Diane looked down to see innocent black eyes looking back up at him. "You really got me into some trouble, huh?" Diane said, chuckling bitterly. He really didn't know what to say to such a thing. He only thought the little guy was adorable. Now its mother was angry. The illusory deer seemed surprised by Diane's calmness. Her cultivation far surpassed this boy, but he seemed at peace. At that moment, her oppressive aura retracted and she even seemed to smile. "I'm sorry, Senior. I was only playing around with Little Black. I'd never disrespect the deity. Like celestial deers," Diane said politely. The illusion remained silent for a while before nodding. Then, she shrunk into a woman so beautiful, even Madeline couldn't compare. Diane had never seen a woman so beautiful to the point where she was almost suffocatingly so. It could only be said that her husband was a very lucky man. It seems like the martial world really does increase beauty. But, it's best I don't offend such a powerhouse. For the first time, Diane kept his flirtatious comments to himself. This wasn't because he was scared for him, but if he died, then who would help Madeline? But, this didn't stop Diane from being mesmerized. Chapter 53. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The illusory lady in front of Diane had white flowing hair. Her cheapao matched her previous fur, white with swirling patterns of gold. She walked slowly to Diane, seemingly sizing him up. Even within the celestial deer sex prime, those with innate auroras were rare to the point that we only had a handful ever in our long history, she muttered. She doesn't seem to be in peak condition, thought Diane. Of course, he didn't say this either. Who knew if this expert would take offense to such a thing? Finally, she looked up from her analysis. "Don't move," Diane saw an delicate illusory hand touch his forehead. Even if he wanted to move, he was powerless to stop it. He felt as though his whole life was being laid bare. His memories flashed through his eyes and after but a moment, it seemed like this woman knew everything about him. "It seems like your sect is dealing in quite some darkness. But, to be able to form 9th common level arrays with such little practice, you would be a peak genius even lined up against our whole lineage," the lady nodded in satisfaction. "It seems like my wait wasn't for naught. I know what you need, just come with me. I'm willing to bestow what you need to save your woman as long as you promise to take care of my child like your own little brother after I fade. I'll be leaving an imprint on your heart. If you ever dare treat him like a tool, the sliver of my soul will kill you in an instant." A cold sweat appeared on Diane's back, but he was relaxed. He had no intentions of abusing Little Black, so he was content with the arrangement. But, wasn't this all a little too fast? What had this woman been waiting for? And, she seemed to be a soul, but how did she have such a young child? Had she only recently died? Beyond that, did she really have a way to cure Madeline? Was she trustworthy? Wait, Senior, you know about goddess disposition. Still, Dawn couldn't help but ask this. "AI, it's among the top 3 innate god-level body constitutions a female can have. The celestial lady began to walk into the building, but it's also among the most troublesome. Although the way this Akihiko noted is indeed a way to cure it, it also means draining your woman of all her potential. Her lifespan would be that of a normal human, and all of her talent would then belong to him. It's a method only Dark Clan members would use. I suspect this Dayu clan has affiliations with them. I believe I heard about a Dayu clan many millennia ago, but they were wiped out during the war my Celestial Deer clan had with their allies against our enemies. I'm not sure if they're related or not, but it's important for you to not underestimate them in the future. The woman's mood seemed complicated when she spoke of these events. Diane's expression turned serious. So, is there a way to cure her without draining her potential? There are a few ways. The crudest way is to drain all of her blood and replace it with blood from another god-level constitution. Another way is for her to unite with someone who has the god's disposition body type, the symptoms of which are much the same, but within a male. But, I don't think either of these are routes you can or want to take. Another option is a Grandmaster level pill called the Constitution Awakening Pill. It seems counterintuitive to awaken a constitution that's plaguing her, but the constitution is actually only acting up like this because it needs a catalyst to be fully awakened. Does the Celestial Deer clan have those pills on hand? Of course we do. Such a monstrous sect would have hundreds of disciples with constitutions that needed to be awakened. However, these pills have lost their potency over the thousands of years it has been since the sect was destroyed. The Celestial Lady sighed as she came to massive black doors. It almost looked like a tomb. Diane's determination steeled. What level of array alchemist must I be to forge the pill? The Celestial Lady had already said that it was a Grandmaster level pill. Obviously, then, one had to be a Grandmaster to forge it. But, since this woman also said she had a solution, she must have another way. As of now, Diane was nowhere close to this level. The Celestial Lady turned and smiled in satisfaction. Determination is exactly what you need on the path of cultivation. That girl is lucky to have you, and my son will learn well under you. Normally, you'd need to be a peak-level Grandmaster Array Alchemist to form the pill, so your Aurora would have to be at the Saint stage. But, there's another way. If your Aurora reaches the blooming stage, a step beyond your current foundation stage, and you use the pill condensation technique of my Celestial Deer sect, then you can combine the pills that have lost their potency together to form a super pill of sorts. In fact, considering your talent, you might be able to awaken 100% of her constitution if you combine enough pills. Usually, the pills only awaken about 60.7%. Diane's hands clenched. I can do this. The only reason I even bring this up as an option is because I trust in your comprehension abilities. This technique may not have high requirements for cultivation because you're using already made pills, but it requires a comprehension level even higher than the understanding of the person who made the pill. I'll transfer the technique to you soon. As for your soul strength, I think I have a solution. The path of cultivation you want to take is in fact something many geniuses have done before you. To wait until your body matures is a path only those of absolute confidence take. In fact, if your woman hadn't been born into such a low level of the Sapientia clan, she probably would have taken this path as well. It's unfortunate that they wasted her potential like that. But, if you take a cultivation cleansing pill with you as well, you can give it to her before you awaken her constitution completely. Then she can start cultivating immediately. This is the benefit of having a god-grade constitution. Anyone with such a constitution can begin cultivating immediately as long as it's fully awakened. The loud sound of shifting gears sounded. The doors slowly opened, and the sight before Diane had him nearly drop Little Black. Chapter 54. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Sad whimpers started coming from Diane's arms. He looked down to see Little Black hiding in his chest, trying to turn away from the scene. That was when Diane saw it. Two massive creatures hundreds of meters long and wide. One was exactly like the illusory deer he had seen in the sky. A picture of perfection, it rested quietly as its head rested against the forehead of another massive creature. This other was covered in black scales. Its horns were massive, at least a quarter of the length of its body, they branched in elaborate and elegant patterns and had jet-black ancient marks etched directly onto them. That's a Qilin, Diane sucked in a cold breath. The celestial woman sighed, this is my husband and I. We died in the war and he gave up his soul to nourish mine so I could stay alive long enough to birth little black. I had been suppressing my pregnancy with the strength my husband left me, but when I sensed you a few weeks ago, I had already assumed that you'd come eventually, so I was finally able to rest. Little Black. I hadn't had the heart to name him until now, but since you seem to like that name, my child, I'll allow you to have it. I'm sure you will give him another when he matures and enters his human form. Diane couldn't imagine how powerful this celestial deer and Qilin had to be to become so big, but what was clear was that Little Black's bloodline was extraordinary. Qilins are prideful and solitary creatures. If it wasn't for me, he would have never died like he did. To protect a sect of humans of all things, he became the laughing stock of his clan and Little Black was disowned. Diane clenched his fists, the martial world truly is cruel. The celestial woman sighed again, come with me. They stepped into the tomb, letting a heavenly fragrance waft past them. The celestial woman walked to her husband's forehead and placed her hand on the center scale after raising up into the air. A light flashed, causing a shudder in the body of the massive dark Qilin as an enormous pitch-black drop of blood was pulled out by the woman. She silently moved onto her forehead before pausing. After I pull out my essence blood, I won't be able to stay much longer. I'll properly fade away. So, first, I'll pass to you the legacy of the Celestial Deer clan. I don't ask you to get revenge for us. Nor do I ask you to put your life on the line. Enough blood has been shed. I won't even tell you the story behind our war. I only ask that you take care of my child and once you're powerful enough, pass on the legacy of the Celestial Deer sect. Once Little Black is able to make his own decisions, allow him to decide whether to return to his father's clan or not. I owe my husband to not let our child die for the same reasons we did, she said faintly. Diane could feel the sadness in her voice as a stream of memories invaded Diane's consciousness. Not able to withstand it, he fell to the ground as a gentle wind carried him there. As he was losing consciousness, a soft voice rang in his mind. The essence blood of a demon Qilin and a celestial deer will give you a body strength few can match. It will take a few years to absorb all of it fully, but it will be just in time for your body to start cultivating. Then you can choose from the celestial deer sect's whole collection. Since you don't have time right now, I'll help you forcefully ingratiate 5% of each with the last of my strength. In the future, you'll need high-level body tempering fruits and medicines to continue. The demon Qilin will help you have a high affinity for fire, wind, darkness, and demonic wills. However, my blood will allow you to better understand celestial, light, and crystal wills. This is my thank you to you. I've seen your life and I understand what kind of person you are. I don't believe it's wrong to entrust you with this much. The last thing Diane saw before passing out were two massive drops of blood, one black and one silver, shrinking and condensing before flying into his chest. He blacked out with a shudder. A last voice rang out, thank you. Delia practiced her sword skills under the high sun with Madeline's melody as her backdrop. It had been a month since Diane's death and though Madeline still hurt every day, she had insisted on helping Delia train so she could find a purpose again. Although she felt running away would be easy, she also knew that Diane must have died fighting for her right to live a life she wanted to live. A part of her wanted to give up, to end her own life in one of the many opportunities she had already had, but the thoughts of a young man with a beaming smile was firmly imprinted onto her mind. Even if this was something she didn't want to do, she would marry Akihiko so she could live on for Diane. His parents were dead, he had no family, he had come to this world completely alone. Maybe she was the only one in the world who still truly remembered him. A part of her refused to allow his memory to die. You're my reason to stay strong. While Madeline's smile was decidedly sadder, it had once again begun to appear on her face. You're improving, Delia. It's all thanks to you. Your will of music makes it much easier to focus. I can feel the intent of my ice sword technique much better with you around. Delia thanks Madeline sincerely. Delia walked to Madeline and took a seat on the stone beside her. You know, ever since my mom disappeared, I've wanted to keep Paisha, Neva Peak the exact same. Dad always said she loved nature and hated disturbing it, so I followed her path as best I could, Delia said softly. The blossoms from the trees fell around them, lightly gracing the wind. Chapter 55. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Madeline listened silently. It wasn't often Delia opened up, let alone talked about her mom. Even while she's not here, I want to do my best to do right by her. She may be somewhere far off, or she may be dead. But, what I know is what's in front of me. My will is to get stronger so I don't lose anyone else that important to me. Delia took a deep breath before continuing. I admire your strength, big sister. What you've gone through since your youth. Being treated like a valuable chess piece instead of a human being. Then being tossed aside the moment you were no longer useful. Finding peace after years of struggle, then finally settling into a little bit of happiness, just to have the people you trusted the most take it away from you, be no calm, and yet you sit here, smiling. Yes, it's a smile from pain, but it's a smile nonetheless. You do this, while I can't even get over a woman I call mother that probably left on her own. Madeline looked over to Delia, shocked. Delia smiled bitterly. I know you all tried to hide it from me. But, if you think about it, the answer is obvious. She isn't dead. She was taken and forced to marry into the Clyde God clan. Father wasn't strong enough to protect her after his power was sealed. Delia's voice was faint. But, then, she continued firmly, but, I will be. No matter how hard I have to work. I'll build up my power, find allies, and bring my family back together. Madeline watched Delia mature before her eyes with a smile on her face. It seems we doted you a bit too much. Madeline nodded firmly. After I'm cured, I'll grow stronger with you, little sister. I'll stand against a God clan with you, even if we have to fight them alone. The two girls hugged each other, finding comfort in each other's weakness and strength. After the two girls collected their emotions, Delia stood ready to begin practicing again. Madeline grabbed her lyre, prepared to support her little sister. Delia's sword swung in an arc. You know, the central pillar world is opening tomorrow. The quota is actually much larger this year. There seem to be a lot of new Storm family members. Storm family. Well, I'm not entirely sure if they're from the Storm family. But, they're all blonde and blue-eyed, so I kind of just made the assumption. Really? That's odd. Although, I did hear once from my father that the Storm family is actually a large clan branch that decided to break from the main branch for some reason or another. I heard my father say much the same thing after I was wondering why we allowed them to join the Pillar Family Alliance. He made it seem like he didn't really have much of a choice but to accept. Also, while you were dealing with your illness flaring up, Delia said tactfully, they moved up the date of the big sect tournament. It seems they found a way to power up the dimension-opening treasure much faster. They're planning on using your wedding as an opening ceremony for the tournament. Oh. You'd think the bride would get to choose things like this, Madeline said bitterly. Delia giggled. Since Akihiko is so much weaker than you could have that harem you always wanted. Then you can have as many more weddings as you want to get it right. Madeline laughed genuinely for the first time in what seemed like forever. Don't joke around so much. Why would I waste a wedding on a concubine? Madeline said mischievously. Ha ha ha, Akihiko should feel honored, being the first husband. But, those seniors from the big sects are going to be very angry when they get here. I'll be surprised if he isn't beaten half to death during the tournament. Isn't Akihiko already part of the big sects? I believe it was one under the jurisdiction of a higher-tier Kami branch family. Why would he be in the tournament? Yeah, but the world opening is quite different this year. Because the world they're opening is so much more powerful than the others, the treasure can only support a limited amount of people entering at one time even with the new power supply they've found. So, instead of all the big sect disciples entering, they have to actually limit it this time. Oh. Seems like none of our students will get a chance to go this time. Yeah, to think they groomed us first-year pillar family members for this, just to be disappointed in the end. Don't look down on yourself so much. Your will of the sword has already reached the 3rd level. Don't think I forgot that you only picked up the sword at the beginning of the school year. Just 2 months and you're already this great. How could I compare to Diane? He reached the 9th level of the will of music, and we're the same age. Madeline sighed. Diane has been playing music for more than a decade. It was easy for him to transition his understanding into a will. If he picked up the sword, he might be even slower than you in comprehending it. Oh. So, it's like this, Delia said as she continued to swing her sword. She was secretly relieved. Diane's speed of progress could really hurt someone's pride. So, little sister Delia, you and Meiying will be my maids of honor, right? Delia smiled, of course. Whatever I can do to make this easier for you. Madeline smiled as she continued to play a sweet tone. The sound of the melody and a sharp sword filled the afternoon sky. On Kami Peak a dark mansion stood stoically. It was eerily reminiscent of a Gothic church, with large and narrow windows. However, the atmosphere was ruined by the booming voice of an expert. What do you mean you lost the profound stones in a bet? Elder Kami was enraged. The general stood before him, trying his best not to pass out. Chapter 56 You are listening at novelfull.audio. The general was shaking under the voice of the pillar family leader. I have no excuse. I lost it to the commoner brat. But, from what I hear he's dead. I tried to find his body, but it must have sunk to the bottom of the lake already. There's no way for us to retrieve the money. I broke into his room about a month ago, but I couldn't find the money there. It must have been on him. If Diane had known that the one who set the alarms off in his room was the general, it was truly hard to say how he'd react. Kami, though, felt like pulling his hair out. Those were the stones he had set aside to sustain the betting pool for the tournament and possibly bribe the big sects if his younger son Mayumi wasn't good enough to gain a spot on his own. These stones were especially important since he had been bedridden for so long due to the injury to his soul. But now it was all gone because of the same brat he had stomped out like an ant. The school is going to be a laughing stock because you can't control your fucking gambling addiction. I really didn't think I'd lose Grand Elder Kami. How could I know a kid with no cultivation could punch with 1,500 pounds of force? I don't want to hear your sorry excuses. I want you to find a way to give me back 30,000 profound stones. How can we host a tournament and not have a betting ring? What the fuck is wrong with you? I actually have an idea about that, Sir Grand Elder. That day, the kid sold array plates for 2 profound stones each. He was even planning on selling them to senior students for more. What we could do is confiscate those plates under the guise of it not being conducive to proper training. Then, we can sell them in a market. That way, we can make back even more than 30,000 profound stones. Even if some of the students have used their plates, as long as we sell them for 5 or even 10 profound stones apiece, we'll more than make up for the missing ones. It was only after hearing this that Kami's brows loosened somewhat. His fingers had been itching to simply kill this so-called general, but he made a lot of things convenient for him. If not for this, how could such a bastard still be under him? What are you still standing here for? Get it done. The tournament starts in a month and a half, I expect it to be done well before then. Kami watched the general run away. What a pathetic excuse for a teacher. Although, a kid with no cultivation being able to punch with 1,500 pounds of force is fairly surprising. We could probably sell these plates as an aid to the big sect disciples during the big sect tournament. I'll also save a few for little Mayumi for when he's recovered. It'll make up for his not cultivating for 2 months. Thinking up to this point, Cammy walked away from the scene. Ugheg. Senior brother Lehabim, please. You've been roaring in rage for the whole ride. We can't represent the Flame Sword sect like this. The Focus Academy students look up to us. How could I calm down? They think they can appease me with some garbage Central Pillar World quota. My goddess is getting married. And it's not to me. Senior brother, please. I hear that if she doesn't do this, she'll die. Would you rather your goddess die than be with someone other than you? Hearing this, the one they called Senior Brother Lehabim finally calmed himself a bit. You're right. But I swear to do whatever I can to join her harem. How could this weak Akihiko character be strong enough to make her stay committed to him? I'll crush him in the trial world. Then I'll crush him in the tournament. How dare he? Ugh. Lehabim's junior brothers and sisters shook their heads helplessly as they continued riding a bright red bird in the direction of Focus Academy. Unsurprisingly, similar scenes were happening as more and more people found out about Madeline's wedding. Secluded geniuses who had their spots reserved already awoke in agitation, getting ready to make their way to the tournament just to show that they were the only ones worthy of Madeline. In fact, there was even a certain senior sister mixed in. How could a man be worthy of my Madeline? She needs a woman who understands her. A girl with jet black hair and blue eyes stood on the head of an odd bird. It seemed to be illusory, but if you looked closely, it was more accurate to say that it was made of wind. Yes. Senior Sister Notan, the Wind Blade sect will support you all the way. A bald dark-skinned boy opened his eyes. Is what you said true? Yes, Senior Brother Hashim. Lady Sapientia is getting married as the opening act of the tournament. I know your spot was guaranteed, but I think you might want to go this time. Good. You want to take my woman? We'll see how that works for you. Tell the Destruction Sect elders that I'll be going. Senior Brother Orbis. What is it? Lady Sapientia is getting married as the opening act of the big sect tournament. A fat round boy chuckled, those guys must be up in arms. But, I've already found the love of my life. Lady Notan is the only one for me. If I can't marry her, the path of cultivation will be my wife. Senior Brother. We've heard reports that all the seeded geniuses are headed towards Focus Academy. Including Lady Notan. Not only will you get to see her, you'll get to fight against all the strongest they have to offer in the big sect. Well, why the hell didn't you start with that? I'm coming, my love. Orbis' junior brothers and sisters laughed bitterly, and here we thought he was in it for the competition. Our earth-bound sect really is lucky to have him as our top disciple, they thought bitterly. Chapter 57. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The seeded geniuses are headed to the big sect tournament. Oh. And the center pillar world too. I hear that's a teleportation array to the elven realm. I'm surprised the big sects let them have a monopoly over it. But, I guess if a big sects controlled it, a war would break out. I guess I might as well go visit my little brother. Also, Senior Sister Viridi, Senior Sister Sapientia is getting married. Oh. She used to be my highest goal, it's unfortunate that she's sick. Why is she getting married? And to who? I hear it's Akihiko from the Kami clan. He was found to have a decent percentage of god-level blood from the main Kami clan, so he was accepted into the Kami sect of the big sects. I hear god-level blood is the cure for Senior Sister Sapientia, so her family decided to marry her off. So that's how it is. Sigh, Madeline is really pitiable, I'm sure she doesn't want to do this. The elven world should be really good for our plant cultivation, so we should go. It would be good to support senior sister Madeline too. It seems she'll soon be cured and able to rise again. The girl with dark blonde hair and brown eyes spoke faintly, getting up from her cultivation to prepare for the long journey. It's been a long time since you left, little brother. I know you wanted to support Uncle Ale, but you should know that array alchemy isn't for everyone. The clan couldn't support Aurora Awakening, and my status in the Green Blade sect wasn't this high at the time. I hope you'll come home now. Diane was oblivious to all that was happening in the outside world. If he had known, he probably would have coughed up blood in anger. How could a single girl mobilize the geniuses of so many big sects? Wasn't this too exaggerated? What he didn't know was that Madeline's charm was far beyond just this little bit. The only reason the big sects seemed to be the only involved party was because that was as far as the information had spread. It could be said that as far as the information went, would be exactly how far those who reacted to it would travel. The only reason these big sect geniuses even felt they had a chance was because Madeline was sick. That aside, Diane's mind was slowly acclimating to the new energy. The strain on his soul because of it was causing it to grow stronger. Diane's aurora, as a result, was slowly encroaching upon the blossoming stage. At the same time, Diane's body was getting stronger as well, but not due to his soul. The demon Chelan blood and celestial deer blood were really working wonders. Little Black watched, lying on Diane's chest, as black scales covered in crystals flashed into and out of existence on Diane's chest and arms. His aura was sometimes light and pure, and other times dark and heavy, creating a domineering dichotomy. Diane's body bulged, growing taller and more muscular. Without him knowing, his 17th birthday had passed, and he had grown to almost 2 meters tall due to the essence blood. His lean body was slightly more defined and bulkier, but he still retained a slim, powerful appearance. His features increased in a sort of devilish handsomeness. His skin became fairer as his body became stronger and stronger, acclimating to the 5% of both blood drops that had fused with it. Roar. The roar of a dragon emitted from Diane's mouth as the last of the blood and memories fused with him. His eyes slowly opened as the scales and crystals faded and checked to find that 2 more weeks had passed. 1 month and a half left. 1 month and a half of struggle left. Then, I'll never let you struggle again. Eli. Eli, oh, ha. Sorry Uncle Ale, I wasn't paying attention. Uncle Ale sighed. I know you're thinking about Diane. But, the martial world is cruel. Without backing, or without willingness to bow your head, it's almost impossible to survive. It's just a shame that such a genius died. But, we have to move on. I've decided that you'll return to the clan. You've allowed yourself to be bullied here for too long for the sake of this old man. Eli was listening to Uncle Ale solemnly, but he couldn't help but laugh at the last line, old man. You're not even 30, Uncle. If the elders here knew they were treating such a genius so disrespectfully, they'd cough up blood with regret. Uncle Ale laughed lightly. That Diane boy had sharp eyes, it seemed he could tell I was younger than I looked. But, don't try to change the subject. The uproar from Lady Madeline's wedding has caused all the seated geniuses out of their preparation for the legacy world. In addition, the elven world will be opening up soon. How could your elder sister miss any of those 2 things? You'll go back with her once everything is finished. Your cultivation is being stifled in this small place. Your talent in alchemy and herbology is much more than mine. Don't drag yourself down because I have useless dreams. Uncle Ale, I'll go back, but you're coming with me. How could you expect to become an array alchemist here of all places? They may have needed a top-notch alchemist like you, but so do many other places. Also, I think the Viridi clan is short-sighted. They choose to focus on only half of the mysteries of array alchemy because they're cowards. I respect you more than any of them, Uncle. Uncle Ale sighed. It's not that they're cowards, it's that the alchemy divisions are starting to suppress the array alchemists. No one thinks there's a future in it anymore. Ever since the Celestial Deer clan was annihilated, the world began to lose more and more methods of producing top expert array alchemists. So, they tore apart the one occupation into two, completely destroying the deeper meaning behind the ancient profession. Uncle Ale shook his head. The truth behind the fall of array alchemy was far deeper than he stated, and far more dangerous as well. But, he had burdened his little nephew enough with his dreams. Chapter 58. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Uncle Ale sighed. After hesitating for a moment, he decided to continue. Though he didn't want to say too much, he at least wanted to leave some breadcrumbs for his little nephew. If one day he was old and strong enough to grasp a chance for himself, then he could. The meaning behind array alchemy is elusive, but from my studies, I've come to understand that understanding of life and plants, and the understanding of arrays and formations, are inextricably connected. How can one build a proper array without being in line with the environment around them? The goal of an array is to literally create a new law and order in a limited space. How could you do that without understanding the laws to begin with? And what about alchemy? Your goal is to create new life in the form of grafting plants or God-like pills, some of which even have souls of their own. How can you do that without understanding the way of manipulating the laws of the world? Eli had heard this speech a million times, but he was captivated by it just the same. And yet these so-called novel experts seem to think that separation is the way to go about it. In my opinion, even the rotting main array alchemy branch stands head and shoulders above any formation or alchemy branch. Eli smiled. It's a shame the clan didn't agree with you, Uncle. We're stuck in the ways of alchemy, but it bottlenecks our future. Without understanding of arrays and the manipulation of laws, transcending to Grandmaster alchemy is impossible. It's okay though, Uncle. Before dying, Eli took a deep breath. He left us something. He didn't forget our little faction. With these array plates he left, we can not only try and comprehend the other half of array alchemy, we can sell them to fund awakening your aurora to 20%. That way, you can truly become an array alchemist. Don't be silly, little Eli, opening it to 10% will be enough for me. We'll open yours up to 15%, your potential is much higher than mine is. Eli was about to protest when he saw the resoluteness in his uncle's eyes. He could only shake his head and smile bitterly. That aside, Eli, you should also focus on your cultivation. The elven world opens tomorrow, and your sister should be here by then. Go in with her. For some reason, they've removed the usual quota system this year. It seems they want to find some items and want the most people looking. Really? I haven't seen Big Sister in forever, I miss her. Okay. I'll go. Oliver. You weak fuck. Get out here. The robust laughter of a fiery redhead filled the center pillar roof. Oliver sighed. Junior Lehabim, it's nice to see you. TSK, already 21 and still in the foundation stage. Isn't it embarrassing to be of equal strength with your little sister? I would thank you for killing the guy she was in love with, but you're letting her marry another loser. I need an explanation. Why is my woman not marrying me? Oliver's expression darkened, but before he could respond, a deep and resounding voice interrupted him. You have a lot of nerve, Sparky, to claim my goddess as your woman. You want to fight, you bald fuck. This Oliver pussy wouldn't even if I challenged him, but I'm sure you've at least opened 9 meridians, right? If not, this wouldn't be any fun. Lehabim cracked his knuckles. A vein began to pop on the dark-skinned teen's shining head. Say that one more time, you half-cocked fire imp. Lehabim's fiery red hair seemed to get brighter as he stormed up to Hashem. He had a smile that wasn't a smile on his face. It seems that balding at such an early age made you senile. You think you can speak that way to just anyone? Oliver smiled bitterly, trying to intervene. Guys, please. You're valued guests of our Focus Academy, you can't fight here. They both turned to Oliver, eyes burning with fury. Shut the hell up, Oliver. The only reason I haven't beaten you to a pulp is because of your sister. But, considering you killed that impotent fuck, I guess she might not protect you so fervently anymore, right? Does that mean I can kick your ass without worrying about her hating me? Boomed Hashem. Oliver's fists clenched. His relationship with his little sister had been his sore spot for the last month. But, he was still a genius in his own right. So what if they'd already broken into the meridian formation stage? He was tempering his wills first to stabilize his foundation. We'll see who tramples on who during the big sec tournament, said Oliver through gritted teeth. I'm not like you weak so-called geniuses, I want to temper my meridians with 3 wills, not just 1 or 2. After I find a wind intent fruit in the elven world, I'll properly step into the meridian formation stage. Lehabim and Hashem looked at Oliver with a slight surprise. It seems he's already understood 2 wills. And wants to understand a 3rd. The truth was, the meridian formation stage was a realm of opening 108 meridians. To do so, you had to temper the closed meridians with your understanding of wills. This increased your affinity with your chosen wills and increased your chances of understanding their respective intents later on in cultivation, not to mention making your meridians more durable for higher levels of cultivation. Usually, regular cultivators only understand a single will before using it to temper their meridian openings. A genius would use 2. It seemed like Oliver wanted to use 3 to do so, but his cultivation had slowed down because of it. With my current level of understanding of wills, don't believe that I can't slice you 2 in half where you stand. Oliver's eyes sharpened as swirls of sword chi flew around him. Chapter 59. You are listening at novelfull.audio. That's 5th level sword will. A feminine giggle sounded off in the distance. Don't be so dramatic, brother-in-law, you know those 2 can't control themselves. If you were as beautiful as you were handsome, maybe I'd take a chance with you instead of my goddess Madeline. A bird made of wind swooped down, dispersing to reveal a tall girl with jet black hair and blue eyes. I see the 2 of you are still fond of not wearing shirts. Notan shook her beautiful head after casting a look toward Hashem and Lehabim, barbarians. Oliver's lip twitched. Brother-in-law. Who's your brother-in-law? So, it's Lady Jessica Notan. It's a pleasure, Oliver still replied politely. Jessica nodded towards Oliver, before turning a look of disdain towards Hashem and Lehabim. Did you think my Madeline would be impressed by your testosterone-filled heads? You 2 disgust me. There are a million, trillion men in this world more muscular than the 2 of you, so how about you go take a shower and put on a shirt, you're stinking up the night air. Oliver almost slapped his own forehead. Weren't you just trying to get them to stop fighting? Now you're adding fuel to the flames. Lehabim and Hashem turned their heated gazes towards Jessica, their eyes roaming over her tight black training suit. It's a shame her temperament isn't as elegant or graceful as Madeline's. Hashem nodded in agreement. She's not as beautiful either. Lehabim and Hashem nodded together like they had suddenly become the best of friends. Be Nov calm, who said my love isn't as beautiful? A round boy bounded over to the group just as sparks were about to ignite. Jessica's lip twitched. Who's your love? I don't need you to protect me, Orbis. You can either be silent, or you can taste my wind blades like these 2. Oliver, seeing a fight was about to break out, jumped out again to try and mediate. Brothers, sister, please. The central pillar world opens up tomorrow morning. I know you all don't want to risk injury before that. Let's just talk about martial arts like the old days. A girl with dirty blonde hair and brown eyes walked slowly to the group. Brother Sapientia is right. How about you bring out the other Focus Academy geniuses, Oliver? It might help water down the situation. Oliver sighed in relief, seeing the young woman of the Viridi clan. His heart pounded slightly faster, but he did his best to maintain a calm smile. Since Sister Venus wants to see the Focus Academy alumni, I'll call them over. Chinglei and Akihiko are currently trying their best to win over their fiancés, but there's still Draco and the Toptha from the 6th years. I can call over a few other promising geniuses as well. Remember Avius. Although he most likely passed away, his little sister is quite a genius too. Just recently turned 17 during the spring, yet she recently broke into the 6th foundation layer. Also, there's Tammy from the Storm family. It seems like she's their top genius. She's about to turn 19 yet is already at the 8th layer. I'll bring them over. Lehabim looked excited. Ava. She's a redhead too, right? Humph, can't even focus on one girl yet you think you have the right to seek out my goddess. Spoke Hashim in disdain. You're one to talk. You can't even speak cordially with the Duco family's senior sisters without stuttering or blushing. I swear the shine on your head amplifies tenfold when they're around. You. It's called a healthy respect. A healthy respect. Hashim said defiantly. Disgusting. Jessica said in disdain. Would you like some water, my love? Orbis didn't wait for an answer as he brought over a pitcher of water and poured a cup for Jessica. Jessica took the cup with a harumph. If only I knew where my Madeline was staying, then I wouldn't have to be here, she muttered. Come, come. Sit at the banquet table. The geniuses of Focus Academy will be here shortly. In the meantime, we can just talk. I actually had questions I wanted to ask you about the Will of Wind, Jessica, Oliver said with a smile. The next morning, hundreds of young men and women stood on the top floor below the roof of the central pillar. The pillar family head stood in front of the crowd before Pasha. Neva took a step forward to speak. As you all know, our Focus Academy is built in the wreckage of what used to be the Celestial Deer sect. Although what we found was minimal and could only be stored in the small library in our center pillar, there was one thing that was left in the best of conditions. The center pillar world. This is actually a teleportation array to what we believe is an elven forest. We aren't even certain of the grade of array it is, so we can't be certain of how far it teleports you and can definitely not protect you. We've found over the years that while the elven government may allow younger cultivators in, they kill cultivators above 25 with no hesitation. We believe this might have to do with a pact the elven kingdoms had with the Celestial Deer sect. Although we cannot be certain, the information we have cost the lives of many elders. Take this very seriously. Although there is no cap on the amount of times we can use this array, it still takes tens of thousands of profound stones to activate. So, this is a heavy investment for our school. Make sure to grasp this opportunity. The array will automatically teleport you back in 1 month. Good luck. And be careful. You must stay within the designated areas. Once Pasha.Neva's voice finished calling out, the sound of excited chatter filled the floor. Do you know anything about the elven world, big sister? Venus ruffled her little brother's dirty blonde hair with a gentle expression in her eyes. Not much, but I do know that there are what they call intent fruits there in addition to cultivation fruits. The intent fruits make it easier to understand wills and, if they're of good enough quality, intents. The cultivation fruits make body tempering and meridian formation more gentle and smooth. In addition, with the atmosphere of nature in their kingdom, it's very good for us of the Viridi clan. Eli nodded obediently. Uncle Ael agreed to come back, big sister, that's good, right? Venus smiled. Of course, father misses him very much. He misses you more though, you were so stubborn to come all the way here. Eli smiled like a child proud of his deeds. Venus could only giggle and turn towards the flashing array. Chapter 60. You are listening at novelfull.audio. At that moment, a tall and delicate-faced blonde-hair and blue-eyed young man walked towards the back of 2 girls before catching them by surprise and putting his arms around both. Ava jumped forward, trying to dodge the arm, but it seemed to be an immovable mountain. Tammy. A domineering voice rang through Ava's ear. How about you introduce me to your friend Env? Tammy froze, looking back and up at the young man who was holding them in place. This is my friend Ava, elder cousin. We'll be traveling together in the elven world. Well, you must have space for one more, right? Although it was phrased like a question, it didn't seem to be. Tammy smiled bitterly, looking over at Ava's questioning gaze. She feigned ignorance and shrugged her shoulders. But, on the inside, she felt like she was falling apart. So not only did you make me kill the man I love, you plan on making my best friend hate me for life too. Well done, Storm family. Well done indeed. A cold light flashed in Tammy's eyes as she pretended to be her normal bubbly self. Well, let's go then, elder cousin. The sooner we get there, the more resources will be available to us. Oh, so you're Tammy's cousin. It's nice to meet you, Ava said with a smile. She was a bit confused as to why she had never seen him before. All members of the Storm family attended the academy, right? But, she didn't bother asking, it didn't seem too important to her. I'm Ball, it's nice to meet such a beautiful girl too. I'm looking forward to the next month, he said with a smile. Although there seemed nothing wrong with the smile on the surface, and he was actually quite handsome, Ava felt like something was off. But, she trusted her best friend wouldn't get her into any irredeemable situations. So, she pushed the feeling aside, smiling back. In the back, a group of 4 blonde hair and blue-eyed Storm family members looked on at Ball. Poor girl, looks like Ball has set his sights on another one. Does he really have to pick on Tammy so much? Said a girl with a bow strapped across her ample chest. You don't even mean that, so I don't know why you try and sound empathetic, Autumn, said another girl with a connectable spear broken in 2 along her back. Maybe if she was strong enough, she wouldn't have to deal with all of this. Since she's the weakest, of course she'll be bullied and be sent to this trash can of a school to control the situation, Autumn retorted. You're well aware that she may be the weakest, but she's also the youngest and has talent in her own right. Not to mention the fact her big brother isn't a joke. If you keep bullying her, the future might not be so bright for you, said a particularly bulky and stoic man. He was almost too tall, standing at 2.5 meters tall. In fact, many of the crowd couldn't stop looking at him. It only made it worse that there was a massive arm-thick 4-meter-long spear graced his back. His aura was domineering despite the lazy look in his eyes. Don't be such a spoiler, Dagon. I've never directly bullied her. But, I'm also not strong enough to stop Ball from bullying her, only you are. So, why haven't you done anything? Dagon looked over at his cousin. You know me, Calidora, how can I improve if I never have any pressure? The thought of her catching up one day and trampling on my pride really gets my blood boiling. Dagon's lazy look transformed as his blue eyes darkened. Electricity started bouncing around his bulky muscles as arcs of gold, red and blue emanated from him. It seemed that even though this Dagon sounded like a voice of reason, he was just as much of a scourge on society as the other Storm family youths. You all need to calm down. You can do whatever you want in the elven world, but we still need to keep a low profile here. Even Tammy keeps her cultivation secret. Don't fuck it up, a faint voice stifled Dagon's aura. Dagon chuckled, it seems I'll have to keep an eye on you too, Blade, do whatever you want as long as you don't ruin the plan. And remember not to touch the big sect geniuses, that's part of the deal. A faint light of spear chi circled around Blade as he walked towards the array. Let's go. Didn't this guy just say to keep a low profile? They'll drive us to an early death. The 2 girls looked at each other helplessly, before following their respective elder brothers. Dian sat up, shivering as he watched death chi escape in a wisp from his body. It seems like I underestimated this death chi, thank you. Dian didn't realize how lucky he was to have this death chi taken out of him so cleanly. Without the intervention of the celestial lady, the adverse effects would have followed him for a lifetime. Dian held Little Black in his arms as the little one licked his face. Looking into Little Black's adorable big black eyes, he patted his head. From today on, you are my little brother. Your mother is now my one and only master in this life. A master for one day, a mother for life. At least that's what those books said about the culture in this martial world. Once we get strong enough, we'll raise hell at your old man's clan. Then, we'll revive the Celestial Deer sect, Diane said gently. Little Black snuggled into Diane's dress shirt.